exactly what I suspected is exactly what Eddie Hearn is saying. Deontay Wilder is done and no title shot against Anthony Joshua. Those are the words of Eddie Hearn. Let's quickly get to what Eddie Hearn's actually said, because Eddie Hearn's basically alluding to Deontay Wilder, if he loses to Tyson Fury, is going to become a voluntary challenger, and he doesn't want Deontay Wilder tied into no trilogy, a step aside deal or anything like that, where he's going to become the mandatory for Anthony Joshua, to come through the undisputed fight with Tyson Fury. So let's quickly get to what Eddie Hearn's actually said. Where is it? Let me just quickly get there. Where are we? Yeah. He said, we also don't want to enter into a deal where we say we beat Tyson Fury and we have to face Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder is out, he's done, he's just a voluntary challenger, so we want a clean slate when we go into a deal, a 1-fight deal with Tyson Fury or a 2-fight. But when AJ beats Tyson Fury, we don't want an obligation to fight Deontay Wilder. So those are the words of Eddie Hearn, and I knew Eddie Hearn would do this. I said this in a previous video, that Eddie Hearn's not going to want to be tied into no deal where they have to be forced to fight Deontay Wilder. You know, they don't want to be paying, Bob Arum's already said that there's no money to be paying Deontay Wilder. And Bob Arum's on his end is already saying here he don't want no step aside deal or anything like that. And Eddie Hearn, after, all the run around trying to source a deal, trying to sort out a deal with Deontay Wilder's team, the 120 million debacle, the 50 million offer that Eddie Hearn apparently made to Deontay Wilder, how long were they negotiating for? Like a year and a bit. And then, and to have Deontay Wilder, tied into a undisputed fight contract with Tyson Fury where the winner has to face Deontay Wilder. I think Eddie Hearn sees that as a slap in the face, to be honest, to be forced to have Deontay Wilder. Now, why wouldn't Eddie Hearn want to face Deontay Wilder? That is a question, because Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder is still a mega fight. Is he not interested, in Anthony Joshua taking on Deontay Wilder? Maybe he said, obviously he did say here that he said that he's just a voluntary challenger, so he want a clean slate when we go into a deal. So if AJ's to fight Tyson Fury, he doesn't want Deontay Wilder tied into anything. He would see, obviously, Deontay Wilder as a voluntary challenger. So let's quickly talk about Deontay Wilder being a voluntary challenger. Now, for me, someone I want to see AJ versus Deontay Wilder. Whether they both have belts, got belts, WBC, whatever they have, I want to see AJ fight Deontay Wilder from a stylistic point of view. Two guys who can punch. The fight's been brewing for a long time, and then we can get this mega USA versus UK fight on. But that fight will only happen, for me, AJ will only fight Deontay Wilder, and I've said this in previous videos, that Deontay Wilder fight will only happen anytime soon if Deontay Wilder has the WBC belt. Because Eddie Hearn's been talking about Deontay Wilder, saying he can't sell tickets for monkeys, he can't sell, he can't sell this, he can't sell that. He walked on the street in New York asking people who's Deontay Wilder, and he was trying to basically say that Deontay Wilder's not popular. I don't know what's been really going on behind the scenes in terms of negotiating a contract with Deontay Wilder to fight AJ. Is there some stipulations that Deontay Wilder doesn't want to agree to? Because Dylan White was already talking about, talking about a deal with AJ, between him fighting AJ, and he was talking about he didn't want to accept the deal because in the rematch, AJ will still get a lion's share of the money. Now, we don't know in the offers from Eddie Hearn and AJ to Deontay Wilder whether a similar offer was offered to Wilder, and that's the reason why they won't take the offer. We don't know what's in the contract, because people say people just don't take offers, but we don't know what's in the offer, and people talk about this is career high money. Like, come on, it's Deontay Wilder's the WBC heavyweight champion. Like, maybe from Eddie Hearn's point of view, before Deontay Wilder wasn't really, he wasn't as known before, but I feel like at the beginning of when fans and everyone was talking about Deontay Wilder versus Joshua, till before Deontay Wilder fought Tyson Fury, and before AJ lost to Andy Ruiz, I feel like they were both Deontay Wilder's profile had grown a lot to warrant a lot more money and a greater percentage based on the few wins that he's got, especially with that, even though he didn't beat Fury in the first fight, He got a lot more notoriety after that, and after beating, knocking out Luis Ortiz, and his highlight reel knockouts as well for Dominic Brazil and all that. Deontay Wilder became going viral on social media. A lot more people knowing his name. I think Eddie Hearn did say that he would warrant, you know, that Deontay Wilder would probably warrant a bit more money. It's a bit more of the split. So maybe Eddie Hearn's looking at, you know, the level of popularity from Wilder, and from, in terms of his growth, like from fighting maybe obscure fighters like Dual Pass and fighting Burmester Vern, to today, where Deontay Wilder, if you ask more people on the street who's Deontay Wilder, a lot more people's gonna know him compared to those days in the past where he was a big puncher but nobody really knew him. You know, people saw him obscurely on Instagram. You know, those memes where Deontay Wilder's throwing, you know, reckless shots that people like to say. But he was quite popular a little bit on social. People didn't widely know his name like that so much outside of the boxing, media and people who follow boxing. But a lot more people are a bit more, you know, who know who Deontay Wilder is. So in terms of selling tickets, I think Deontay Wilder's better than he was previously. His association with Deontay Wilder, association with Tyson Fury, has a lot more British fans know who Deontay Wilder is, as I said before. So, you know, maybe in terms of that, you know, maybe Eddie Hearn's obviously, you know, as I've seen in previous videos, he's acknowledged that Deontay Wilder has probably won a bit more percentage split. But, you know, Eddie Hearn could just easily use the excuse that Deontay Wilder can't sell tickets, he doesn't got no belt, and then they could just freeze him out and sideline him, and then we will never see the AJ Deontay Wilder fight. So, for those of you who want to see AJ versus Wilder, just pray that he beats Tyson Fury. If you want to see Tyson Fury versus AJ, just pray Tyson Fury beats Deontay Wilder in the trilogy. Simple as that. But Eddie Hearn talking about here, saying that Deontay Wilder's basically done if he doesn't beat Tyson Fury. You know, he's talking about Deontay Wilder is out. He's basically acknowledged he's going to freeze Deontay Wilder out. Eddie Hearn saying he's going to freeze Deontay Wilder out. You know, if he doesn't have a belt, if he loses to Fury in the trilogy, he's going to freeze him out. I think he's just trying to repay, you know, Deontay Wilder's team for all of that. He's a bit of spite in his words here from Eddie Hearn, trying to repay bad for bad. Okay, but you know, Deontay Wilder versus AJ is still a big money fight for AJ. You know, so it's still a big money fight, because I feel like one thing that Eddie Hearn, you know, looks at, he's going to be looking at money. That fight's still a big fight for Anthony Joshua. Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua, you want to tell me that's not a big fight? Outside of Tyson Fury, are you telling me that Deontay Wilder versus AJ, I don't care if he loses to Fury in the trilogy, because that's still a massive fight for AJ. Outside of Tyson Fury, I think the biggest fight for Anthony Joshua is still Deontay Wilder. Is it Dylan White? More people's going to pay pay-per-view in the UK to watch AJ Deontay Wilder than to watch AJ Dylan White, in my opinion. You know, big puncher, dynamite puncher. Trust me, Deontay Wilder can still punch. Tyson Fury's a top fighter. When two top fighters fight, someone's going to lose, someone's going to take an L. You know, Deontay Wilder still can punch. Tyson Fury even said in a recent interview that, you know, people are talking about already fast forwarding, talking about, are you fighting AJ, this and that. Tyson Fury just said, listen, if I go and get knocked Spark in the trilogy, this all goes up in smoke. Deontay Wilder's going to be the one looking to fight AJ. So let's everyone just pump the brakes. Let's not be talking about what's happening between Fury and Joshua too quick. Let's see what happens in the trilogy. You know, if Tyson Fury wins, he goes on to fight AJ. Let's too many fans setting themselves up for a shock. If Fury's to get sparked out in the trilogy, Deontay ain't fighting Tyson Fury again. He's gonna go fight AJ, hopefully. But I don't want to see Deontay Wilder beating Tyson Fury. They're gonna go fight no Adam Kaunaki or no one like that. No Robert Helenius or Charles Martin, any of these guys. I want to see the big fights. And with all this thing that's going down with boxing shut down in the arenas and not much money coming into the promotions and everything like this, a lot of bigger fights are going to be, you know, looking to be set up to fast track. A lot of bigger fights are going to be fast tracked, you know, to generate the most money. No one's going to be wanting to pay fighters to fight, you know, cream puffs and bums when there's not enough money to be floating around like that, paying, you know, all these obscure fighters. We need to get the big fights set up and made. You know, so all these fights, we've got Joshua Pulev, we've got obviously the Joshua not Joshua, the Fury Wilder trilogy, whether you want to call it Fury Wilder 3 or Wilder Fury 3, whichever way rocks your boat, you go with that one. But those are the two, you know, major important fights in heavyweight division right now in terms of who's going to become undisputed. Imagine a scenario where Kubrat Pulev, because I need to check. One thing I need to check actually is whether the Joshua Kubrat Pulev fight, if there's a rematch clause in their deal, because mandatory shots are not meant to have, you know, rematch clause. I need to go have a look if there's a rematch clause in their deal, if there's any news on down the airwaves, because I saw somewhere there might be a rematch clause. If there's a rematch clause in that contract, I don't know why Pulev's team would have agreed to that, because they don't need to actually agree to that. Because why on earth would Pulev, you know, how old is Kubrat Pulev now? I'm sure he's like 40 or something like that. This guy just needs to ride out into the sunset with his belts and go fight who the hell he wants to fight, instead of waiting, you know, fighting rematches and giving, you know, how's he gonna go on the fight? What if he goes and takes on this rematch and then gets beat? Then he ain't got no undisputed. So I have to see what Bob Arum and them have, you know, worked out for Kubrat Pulev. Maybe he hasn't got a rematch clause in his deal with AJ, but we just have to wait and see what happens. But drop your comments in the comment section below. What do you think about Eddie Hearn basically firing back, trying to freeze out Deontay Wilder, talking about Deontay Wilder's done no title shot against Joshua? Do you think this is just words from Eddie Hearn? Are the dollar signs and pound signs gonna light up in Eddie Hearn's eyes, and it's gonna backtrack on what he said? You know, because we've seen Eddie Hearn backtrack on so many things that he said before. Let's see what he's gonna be saying now, when you got a Deontay Wilder mega fight staring in his face. I think the pound signs are gonna definitely be lining up in his eyes. So he's probably gonna end, maybe he's telling the truth and he's not gonna want that fight to happen between AJ and Deontay Wilder, because Deontay Wilder, dangerous man stylistically. You know, Deontay Wilder fine, Anthony Joshua stylistically. Dangerous fight for AJ in terms of his style. I think AJ is much more likely to get hit by that Deontay Wilder steel hammer right hand than someone like Tyson Fury. So drop your comments in the comment section below. What do you think about everything that I said and Eddie Hearn saying that Deontay Wilder's done? Cool.